To me, it's one of the few countries that produces cultural products that are consumed by people from other cultures. All the underworld was based in Dubai. They knew the potential of Hindi movies. In Tamil Nadu, it was the Tamil Tigers who were funding the films.
Assign the rights in the first place.
Even A.R. Rahman was not able to retain his rights in those days until he got a British lawyer.
Intellectual property, how can artificial intelligence help us in this direction?
You can do whatever you want to an original track, will be found out. In the copyright system, if you have a very big hit, it should sustain you your whole life and even your children's children. Remove the music and FM radios shut down. The whole business rests on music. They have never paid the other composers.
How does this compare to what was the global norm?
Those who had weightages have all moved now towards equal, 1-to-1. Music is music in the end. Who are you to say that my music is better than yours?
Namaste and welcome to Music Mehfil India. For those of you who are new here, I'm Aruna, Jade, your host. And here on the Music Mehfil India channel, we are attempting to capture the stories of music from India. And today our guest is Achille Forler. He has been one of the earliest players in the music publishing business of India. He has a company called Silk Road. He has now a company called Sync Mama. He has served as the managing director of Universal Music Publishing, as well as continues to be an advisor to IPRS. Achille, thank you so much for being here. We are so happy to host you, do this episode with you. How are you today?
Hello, Aruna. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Can you tell us a bit about what got you started in music publishing in India?
Yes, well, I was not into music. I was posted in the French embassy in New Delhi as an audiovisual attaché. So I was covering radio, television, cinema, and music. Mm-hmm. I did the first market survey of the Indian music industry in 1993.
Oh, wow.
And doing the market survey, I realized that copyrights were bundled all together like physical goods. So it was a kind of like a bag of potato that the record label, bought from the farmer. Mm-hmm. That is the composer and the lyricist. And once they bought that bag of potato, the lyricist and composer had no further interest in it. And the labels would not understand that why should I pay royalties to the lyricist and the composer when I am making chips with their potatoes, right? Mm-hmm. The only thing is that the bag of potato, you can make only that many chips. Then you have to buy another one. While with songs, you can make billions of chips for 100 years.
Right.
So that was the difference. But anyway, I saw that there was an opportunity. And I also found out that very few Indian songs were registered abroad. Mm-hmm. And therefore, any money that was collected for the use of Indian music in Indian films or in hotels or restaurants or even as mechanicals would not be paid to the original right owners. India was, to me, it's one of the few countries that produces cultural products that are consumed by people from other cultures. It is Indian dance, Indian painting, Indian movies, of course, which were very popular in French and Francophone Africa, as well as Anglophone Africa, in the whole Central Asia, Russia, etc. And even in South America. A friend of mine in London, an Indian, he had 2 cinema halls in Lima, in Peru,
Oh.
where he was showing only Hindi movies
Wow.
in the 80s.
Okay.
And so that means that there was a demand for these cultural products. And therefore, since the cultural products produced in India had a global market, in order to monetize properly these cultural products, you had to play the game, play according to global rules, which record labels or film producers did not at that time. Film producers did not because they were not considered as an industry. They could not get money they could not get legit money from banks or investors in those days.
Right.
Before 2001. You see, all the underworld was based in Dubai. They knew the whole African market. They knew the potential of Hindi movies. For them, the income potential. And so they were funding Bollywood movies, while in Tamil Nadu, it was the Tamil Tigers who were funding the films. And they were distributing. It was a huge income. They were distributing legit as well as pirating Indian movies. Cultural products were in the hands of the underworld. I mean, to me, it was very clear that sooner or later things will have to change.
Yeah.
And so I resigned from my diplomatic assignment and I started Silk Road Communications. And at the same time, I organized in November 95 in Goa the first Asia-Europe symposium on intellectual properties in the cultural industries of Asia.
Oh, wow.
And we had 14 directors of copyright from all over Asia, including Mongolia.
Okay.
And we had, actors, actresses from Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, Vietnam. It was a 2-day symposium. And then we published what has been called the Goa Declaration.
Okay.
And you will see that in November 95, whatever we said there has happened. Some of it very late. I thought it would happen earlier, but because there was a huge resistance from the incumbents, because, for various reasons, sometimes understandable reasons. But it finally happened.
What were the first years of Silk Road like?
I kept music production and music publishing separate. And so I created Deep Emotions Publishing, which was the first pure music publishing company ever created in India. The first years, you see, what is a music publisher? A music publisher is an empty shell. It's a guy who has nothing, who says, I am ready to do everything for you guys who create the music. So he goes to these guys, the lyricists, the composers, he give me your rights and I'll bring in the money. That's music publishing. A music publisher has no rights except what author composers give to him. So when you're a music publisher, the first thing was to create a catalog. Now, at that time, lyricists and composers in India were totally unable to retain their rights. Even A.R. Rahman was not able to retain his rights in those days until he got a British lawyer to assist him. Right?
Oh, wow.
He lost all his rights in those days. So nobody had any rights to give me. So what do? You'll say, okay, these local labels, they are distributing foreign repertoire. So let me get the rights of foreign repertoire and I will collect the mechanical rights because they are making cassettes, they are making CDs. So there is a reproduction right or a mechanical right, which they have to pay, but which they never paid. The record labels, all of them, without exception, said to the foreign publishers that we are not allowed. Our law doesn't allow us. Because there is no such word as music publishing in the Copyright Act.
Okay.
But the point is that no Copyright Act in the world, not even the Berne Convention, uses the word music publishing. It's an industry word, right? Just like mechanical right is an industry. In copyright law, you call it reproduction right. But in industry, we say it's the mechanical right because it's the mechanical reproduction. So I went to the Midem every year trying to convince some publishers that there is a market in India, that I can do the job. But a music publisher, since he is administering copyrights that belong to other people, that is to the lyricists and the composers, they had to assign the rights to me. Assigning the rights means from this day to that day, after 3 years, these rights don't belong to me anymore in that territory. They belong to Deep Emotions Publishing.
Right.
And what if I do any stupid thing with those rights? Say, make a sync for a political party, and the original composer, he has an opposite view, and he say, who is the idiot who did that sync for ideas that don't belong to me? And they can withdraw, they can punish if they don't have a good relationship already with their original publisher, they will use that and say, you are not doing as agreed, I withdraw my catalog from you.
But in India, no one could assign the rights in the first place.
No, nobody had any rights.
Okay?
Right. My situation was that I could not get local repertoire, so I had to get international repertoire. And to get international repertoire, you have to go through the fire. They test you. So finally, I got the catalog of someone who was hugely popular, Richard Klederman, the pianist. He was hugely popular in India at that time. And he was distributed by Virgin. So I got the catalog, went to Virgin and said, you have to pay me mechanicals. Virgin said, no, we are not allowed. Okay. So I said, fine, let's test it in court. So there was a back and forth, and then finally the CEO of Virgin at that time, who was a very, very decent gentleman, really a nice guy who afterwards left for Singapore. And I believe he's dead now. But he was a really, really nice person, logical and honest. So he said, okay, fine, I'll pay you. You see the problem, why the labels were adamant. First of all, nobody likes to pay. Whether it is the owners or the users, nobody likes to pay. But the second thing is that India had capped royalties at 20%.
Why so?
Well, it was a decision by the government.
Okay, so arbitrarily.
Not for music, for everything, for pharmaceuticals, for everything.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the record labels, the local offices of international labels, they repatriated 20%. The maximum they would repatriate. So they were afraid that if I pay 5% for publishing, then I have to reduce the payment to my mother company from 20 to 15. It was a belief, okay, which was convenient to them, and so nobody tested it. So I went to the Reserve Bank. I took a lawyer. We went to the Reserve Bank of India. We explained it to them that these are separate rights. And it took after about 4 months, we got a letter from the Reserve Bank of India and saying that we agree with your contention that this is a separate right, hence that it does not affect the 20% paid on phonographic. And mechanical rights which labels said were, they were not allowed to pay. In fact, there has been a decision since 1959 by the Copyright Board that mechanical rights should be paid at 5% of MRP.
This is Indian Copyright Board.
Indian Copyright Board, 1959.
How does this compare to what was the global norm?
No, it was fair. I mean, 5% of MRP. It was rather high. There were many territories where it is less, even 2%. So it was it was very fair to music publishers, I believe.
Okay.
So anyway, they didn't want, and so Virgin paid me in 2021. Then it took me several months to get the order from the Reserve Bank of India, and then by that time I collected for 2022 also. Virgin paid me, and it was quite a sizable amount, and I repatriated it. And then I went to the Midam, was trumpeting that, I am collecting mechanicals in India. That's when all hell broke loose.
How so?
Because there was a meeting in the music industry in India. At that time, there was a gentleman who was throwing his weight around and who was a little bit some would say godfather, but godfather in the filmy term. He was the godfather. And he was, he called everybody. He says, anyone now is going to pay mechanicals to Achille Forler, he will not get a job in the music industry anymore.
And did that actually happen?
After this meeting happened in the Indian music industry, I got a call from my French publisher of Richard Klederman, Olivier. And Olivier said that, Achille, the fact that you have collected mechanicals is making waves, and we need to talk. Are you coming to Paris anytime soon? So I went to meet him, and he showed me the letter from Virgin London. Dear Olivier, we are under intense pressure from our subsidiary in India not to pay mechanicals. Hence, we request you to terminate your agreement with Deep Emotions Publishing with immediate effect. In return, we agree to pay you 20% on your sound recording rights instead of 50, will increase from 15 to 20% for the territory of India. So Olivier said, look, I know there is no way I can terminate my agreement with you because there is no reason for me to terminate. But if I could get 20% in India, it will help me, it will give me leverage to, when I renegotiate my contracts in other territories, to increase my rate. So I said, look, Olivier, we're in business, and I want you to do well, just like you, by giving me your catalog, you wanted me to do well. So give me the agreement you have with me, and I'll tear it right here. Let's terminate today itself. So he said, look, this is very fair. What I'll do, we'll terminate it now, and I'll pay you the difference of what you should have got for the remainder of the agreement, which had still 18 months to go. So I said, fine, this is fair. So I say, you inform Virgin that it is terminated. What I didn't tell him is that 6 months earlier, BMG had contacted me out of Hong Kong, a lady called Jane English, with whom I am still in touch. And she said, we heard that you are collecting mechanicals in India. How did you do? I say, well, I can prove that I did it. And if you give me your catalog, I'll do it for you. I didn't hear from her after that, except that a few days before Olivier called me, when I was already planned my trip to France, she called me again and she said, if you go to Europe, go and meet our managing director in London.
Right.
And so when I reached the BMG office, we were talking with the MD and introducing each other, getting to know each other. I had a girlfriend who later, 3 years later, she became the girlfriend of Jimi Hendrix. And in fact, Jimi died in her bed. He said, oh, I started out, he told me, as a roadie to Jimi. So I said, but do you know Monica? He said, yes. So, there was that link. And as we were discussing, the chairman from New York walked in. So he said, tell me about India. So I told him, I'm collecting mechanicals, etc. So he said, every time I hear about India, I hear something different. And he turned to the managing director and said, give our catalog to this young man.
You have a sound design agency called Music Curator. What does it do?
It started like that. In 2007, I was still living in Delhi. I went to a fashion show by a French designer, but living in Delhi. During the show, I heard music, which I thought, this is fantastic. That's really what a fashion show should be, and not the boom, boom, boom thing, trying to impress. And so after the show, I asked my friend that who made the sound for you? So he introduced me to a guy called Arnaud Azouz, who had been a head of a audio tech in Belgium, where people could borrow music in those days. And then he managed a band, an international band. And finally, he settled down in Udaipur. And so they were doing all the shows, for the Maharaja of Udaipur. Whenever he rented out his fort for, high-end events, they would do the animations and the music, and they had Malcolm artists, you had all type of artists. It was like a circus. So one day he came to Delhi and we were discussing, and I was telling him a story about one of my experience in Istanbul, in a luxury hotel in Istanbul, and horrible experience about the sound. And he said, but same for me. And he said, whenever I go to hotels, I create my own playlist and said that this is what I would like to hear in this hotel. So I said, let's work together, because there are Rajasthan, Lake Palace, etc. There's magnificent hotels. Our first assignment was for the reopening of the Taj in the Maldives. They said that we want to give a gift to the first 2,000 guests. It should be attractive enough for the guests to give them a memory, and not too expensive. So I said, the least expensive is music. You had these rich people flying into these confettis in the Indian Ocean, staying there for a few nights and days, and tanning in the sun, snorkeling, eating, and then flying out, not knowing that there is a 5,000-year history in this Arabian Sea. And so we created a soundtrack going from Aden, Zanzibar, Somalia, all around India up to Malaysia, which we call the dhow countries, because everywhere they use the same type of boats, the dhow. For each track, there was an explanation, detailed one-page explanation. So it was a luxury product. And so they liked it. And the idea was that when people fly out of Maldives, they should be more intelligent than when they came.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we told the hotel that you can't play, you see, Balearic music, Ibiza, or the same stuff that you will find in a 5-star hotel in Costa Rica or in Brazil or on the French Riviera. This is Maldives. It's a different world. You have to bring this out in the music. And so, and then, of course, we took the license from the original right owners, which was quite a task. And so the Taj liked what we did, and they said, why don't you do for some other hotels, for our luxury hotels, heritage hotels. And that is how we started. And then the next one was the Falak Numa, which was a huge event. A seated dinner in the park on the lawns of 300 royal heads from all over the world, which they flew in. It was a recreation of the 19th century.
Right.
We said that, what about the music? They said, well, you give us some music and we play it over the speakers. I said, over my dead body. You can't do that.
Right.
So what do? I said, what is your budget? Of course, the budget, it was the end of the thing. So there is always very little left. So whatever budget they had, they say, okay, look, we are doing something extraordinary. So we had a harpist, a very good professional harpist who at that time was studying in Pune. And we had a sitarist, a sitar player. And we called one of the most famous ney player of Turkey. So we flew him in. We took these 3 musicians for 2 days, make them rehearse, and create something so that they can play for 2 hours. Not knowing each other. So get them to know and, improvise, but understand each other and then improvise. And so there was a stage, and that dinner, you had 3 musicians, one from Europe, another from Turkey, and another one from India. And why from Turkey? Because the Falak Numa was built, the prime minister of the Hyderabad state at that time, his wife was Turkish. She was a princess from Istanbul.
Okay.
And her mother was from Budapest, Hungary. So to have a European, a Turkish, and an Indian playing together, it made sense, right? You see, when you make music for background, you cannot use the music that is played on radio, because music for radio has hooks, earworms, that it tries to catch your attention, especially the entry, ta 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 ta, and then that you can't use in a background music. I, at that time, was Universal. I was representing a lot of production music, library music, made for the television, made for cinema. It's a music which is usually considered as, cheap music, or which it is not. I mean, Mission Impossible or Terminator, they will not use cheap music, right? And they are using library music. So library music is not cheap music. It's just that it's not made for radio. It's made that when you watch the movie, it creates the emotion.
Yeah.
You don't hear it. Nobody is listening to the music when you watch a movie, right? But switch off the music and it's not the same movie anymore.
Correct.
So the background music must be like that. It should be totally ignorable. You can ignore it. But sometimes when you talk in a restaurant or wherever, in a bar, and sometimes you stop and you lean back and you listen. And then when you listen, it should be of that quality that you say, oh, wow, that's really very good.
You mentioned in our previous conversation that background music was a rather neglected avenue in India. Could you speak more to that?
You have to take into account how things used to work. The composer would be called music director. He would be engaged by producer. I'm talking of the 90s, right? He would tell him, make me a hit like this. So usually many of them, even, Mr. Berman would copy some foreign songs or create a hit or copy what was already a hit and make something similar. Once the producer was convinced that the song is a hit, they would record it, sign actors and actresses, shoot the sequence, and then book a theater, call up some investors, show them this 3-minute video clip. You say, I've got this actor, he is signed, and this is the hit number. And if the investors felt that, yeah, this is a hit number or this is a big actor, then they would invest. Right? So music director was doing the songs, and for the background, many of them would use juniors who work with them. Then you have also the TV serials.
Yeah.
When you have a serial, you see the bad character has his own tune. So that when he comes on screen, you know, okay, this is the bad character.
Yeah.
Right? So these tunes are reused again and again and again and again as long as the series goes on. The same character will have the same tune.
Yeah.
So you have composers who tell you, I have done 1,000 episodes, I have done 5,000 episodes. If you're a serious composer, you cannot. It's not possible, right? But if you work like that, yeah, why not? Yes. So background music was never given its due. When I became advisor to the IPRS in 2017, I wrote the distribution rules. And I said, music is music.
Yeah.
Because that's the way all over the world it is moving. Today, you have societies, for example, PRS in the UK, who used to have weightages 1 to 2, 1 to 3.
If you could mention, what do you mean by these weightages?
That means if it is, say, 1 to 2, then 2 minutes of background music will be paid at the rate of 1 minute of pop music. Yeah. If it is 3, then 3 minutes of background music to earn what pop music earns is in 1 minute. If you want to have a production music industry, which India doesn't have, there is not a single production music library of note in India, because if you invest, you will never recover your money in today's market. Right? Indian film producers and CV serial producers, they use foreign production music.
Right. And what are the current weightages?
There is an AGM at the end on 24th, I think, in the IPRS. And so IPRS is going to change the weightages from 1 to 1 to 1 to 6. I mean, there's a whole formula that has been made out. So, but my point is that it is of no help. It will not help create a production music industry in India at all.
How does it compare with the global trend?
There were territories in the past which had weightages.
Yeah.
And there still are some. But those who had weightages have all moved now towards equal, 1 to 1. Music is music in the end. Who are you to say that my music is better than yours? It's my personal opinion. So I'm not sure it's going to change a lot, but
yeah.
And moreover, when you have background music in a film, how do you get monetized? You can get monetized only in cinema halls, but not in India, because in India, by law, cinema halls don't pay for the music. It's in the law. Or on television, in OTT platforms. you don't have production music on Spotify or,
Yeah.
So there is no other way somebody who works in production music can get royalties except then in broadcast.
Hmm.
And if in broadcast you bring down his rates, then he's doubly penalized.
There's an interesting thing you've said on the Sync Mama website, that royalty free is another word for slavery. If you could explain that more.
Why has royalty free a reason? These user-generated content platforms, YouTube, then later Insta and TikTok and others, you needed music for that. The people who create the videos were ordinary people, and most of them did not even know they didn't even know what copyright meant, right? So they would upload something, take some music from here which belonged to a big label or whatever, and upload, and then they would get
copyright strike.
It was a strike, right?
Yeah.
In the beginning, some clever guys said, why don't we create music where nobody can challenge? Because if you create music and you register it with a copyright society, that copyright society will check with YouTube. Okay? They'll monitor YouTube. So we will create music which is not registered in a copyright society. We own all the rights. So we tell a composer, give us an album, say 10 tracks for this much money, and that's all. And you do not register these tracks with a copyright society. And that is how you have people like Epidemic Sound who came up.
Yeah.
The copyright owner would collect from YouTube, the royalties. But the composer, it was a work for hire, like in India before 2012.
Yes.
We had a meeting. I was in Universal in those days, and I was representing production music. So we had a meeting in Hong Kong in 2014. So I raised that issue. I said, what about these user content generated? Because I used to get some emails, some requests. Can I use this track from Bon Jovi? Can I use this track from Bryan Adams? I want to upload. So obviously, that's not how sync works. Sync is a negotiation. Okay, so you have to go back to the publisher, then to the management of the artist. Then you have the publishing right, and you have the sound recording right, and all this takes at least 1 month. While these guys wanted to post the next day.
Correct.
So then I saw that Epidemic had come up, and that was their answer to this issue.
Right.
In those days, the argument was that how can we, who charge the Star Network or Fox, Mr. Murdoch, X million dollars a year for our music, how can we give it on subscription for $6 a month? Right? Anyway, then I left Universal, and then afterwards I started working for IPRS. But during COVID, this thing came up. I saw Epidemic getting in investments.
Yeah.
And I felt that, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with the copyright system that we cannot license, we cannot offer the music to these people?
Yeah.
Right? Epidemic doesn't pay royalties. When they say we pay royalties, they pay only when they also put the music on Spotify, where it gets a few hundred or a few thousand, listenership, and it's peanuts. And of that, I think they are paying 2% or whatever, just to say that we are paying royalties. But it's not the royalty system.
What is Sync Mama doing differently?
In the copyright system, if you have a very big hit, it should sustain you your whole life and even your children's children.
Correct.
Until it fell in the public domain a few years ago. The biggest earner in the French Copyright Society, SACEM, was the Bolero of Ravel. It was they were collecting around 2 million euros per year. Ravel died, now 80 years ago. But for 70 years after his death, the royalties kept flowing. And in fact, more money was earned than Ravel ever earned during his lifetime.
In his lifetime.
It's same for the Beatles. See the John Lennon estate or others where today the value of this cat. See Bob Dylan, $500 million. He never had any such income by far, Bob Dylan before. So that is how intellectual property works. So royalty free is the contrary. It is slavery, where it's the hamster wheel. I give you this much, produce an album. When the album is, now make another album, you get this much again. Now make another album, And so that's not how the creative industries work. So I thought that, what's wrong with us? One day it hit me that we have turned copyright on its head.
How so?
Because you see, in the past, when you did a sync, you would negotiate the highest rate possible. Because once the sync is done, you did not know if you would ever see any money.
Right.
Sometimes you would get a statement from your copyright society, $35,000 for this sync, which I did 4 years ago. It was bonus. It was not part of the deal. It may or may not come. But today we have the tools to track each and every usage on the internet. Each and every usage. And this tool is becoming more and more powerful every day. Today we have, in the last 1 year, you have two companies have come up, especially one where even any adaptation of your song, they will be able to track. Even when you remix it, they will be able to track it. So in such a scenario, when you know that royalty, the foundation of royalty is revenue proportional to the income when it is exploited. If I give you my music for your project and your project makes this much income, you give me this much. But if it makes this much, you give me this much. I have a subscriber. He pays 500 rupees a month, and he can use as much music he wants for his videos, right? Which he puts on YouTube. Now, out of 100 subscribers, 99, their views will be less than few hundred or a few thousand. So if they paid me 500 rupees, they will not feel that I cheated them. But for me, I will get 50,000 rupees because these people, if I had not offered it to them, they would have gone somewhere else. So I am getting money and they don't feel cheated. But out of the 100, one of them will have tens of millions of views, which is where I will collect the royalties.
Right.
And moreover, all the others, the 99, when you add up, it also adds up to some sizable, not negligible amount. So in the end, what is the scenario? You have somebody who says, I am putting money into one of my ideas. I am producing it. Please give me your music that I can add it to my video. And if the video becomes big, you get big royalties. For doing what? For doing nothing. You just gave him the music. It is his work. It is his brain. It is his labor. It is his marketing, right?
Yeah.
So, if before Sing Mama, anybody would go to a big label and say, I want your music, they say, if it's below 30 lakhs, don't even speak to me. Don't even call me if you don't have 30 lakhs, right? Or if you don't have 10 lakhs. And if you are a small YouTuber, nobody is going even to pick up your call. Nobody will reply to your email. Say, I have a YouTube channel for how to keep shoes clean, whatever. And nobody will give you them. No label is going to bother because it's a waste of time for them. So I thought that there is a market which is today exploited in a manner that is, I feel, detrimental to the music creation by some companies. Let me create something. There is no need to cry over, spilled milk because these companies make money and people say, oh no, royalty free, we have to fight. No, give a better answer than these guys.
Yeah.
So what is the better answer that Sing Mama gives? That these people, you subscribe, you have a choice among 50,000 tracks. You come to me for the same price, you have 650,000 tracks. One. These guys, they said, trust us, nothing is going to happen to us. But what you are producing, your video, whatever content you produce, you own the copyright to it for your lifetime plus 60 years or for 60 years. Right? Will Epidemic or others still exist after 10 or 20 years? Maybe not. And if at that time the composer registers then his music with a copyright society, you will get a strike.
Can that happen retrospectively?
When I was in Universal, I got copyright strikes for Hindi movies. Where we were the original owner, because it was, I don't know, it was ABBA or it was some famous American song, which had been remade by a local famous composer who was highly popular in those days and is still highly popular. You have not one, you have several like that who did that, who just copied. But now the algorithms, they find out. And so they say, hey, this one is using your music. So when I get that information, I check. If I am a publisher, I say, I have never licensed this. I'll get in touch with this. It was me. I had such instances where an American composer writes to me and says that this famous Hindi movie made in the 80s is using an adaptation of my work, a cover version, Hindi cover version. What can you do? Okay. So I can go to the court. But if it happens that I am also the owner of that Hindi version, what do? Will you sue yourself?
Yeah.
Right? The point is, you need a license. In Sing Mama, you generate your own license. When you have finished a project, put the name of the project, date, when it is first released, on which platform it is released, which music are you using, how many minutes, second of each track, and you print out a license which you can keep and produce in court for the whole duration of copyright.
Okay, so since we are on the topic of intellectual property, what do you think, how can artificial intelligence help us in this direction?
Every technology has a bright side and a dark side, right? I'm more interested in how a new technology can help my business, can help the business of those whom I represent. As I said, with artificial intelligence, you can do whatever you want to an original track. You will be found out, which was not possible 1 year ago. Okay.
Right.
You can do adaptation, you can do a sampling, you can use only 3 seconds of my track, even a 1 second. In your new recording, you will be found out. But for that also we need to adapt our practices to make it easy for people to license from us and not make it, we have to change, not continue like we did before. The second, in artificial intelligence, I mean, there are many applications which are already there. That is in metadata cleaning, which societies are using, because metadata is quite a mess. And since it is made by humans, it's always error prone. So artificial intelligence immediately detects, suggests what may be right. So the human says yes or no. In SyncMama, we are rolling out before the end of this month, we are rolling out our new platform. And we are rolling out a new version of the AI search, because how do you search the track that you want among 650,000 tracks, right? It's very difficult. It usually took hours. So today, you can find within 10 seconds. There are several ways. One is you have a reference track that we already have. You upload a reference track and we'll find similar track.
Right. So instead of keywords, we are directly using music.
Yeah, because keywords are problematic. The reason being that, one, there is no commonly agreed vocabulary.
Correct.
What one will call cinematic or cinemascope, the other will call open space, right? So if you don't have a common vocabulary, how can people find? The second point is that I have seen in the last 15 years a perversion of the system. 15 years ago, whenever we used to get, because in BMG we had already hard disks where you could search through keywords, which we are giving to the clients. And BMG was the most advanced company at that time. BMG was my partner before Universal became my partner. So in BMG, every track would have 8 to 10 keywords made by the composer, and there was a commonly agreed vocabulary for all the BMG labels, right? And give the keywords exactly what your music is about so that people can find you. But then some composers try to get smart. And instead of 10, they will have 20, then 30, then 40 keywords. So that whenever you search something, their track comes up, even if it was totally irrelevant. So that has been polluting the whole. So on SyncMama, we had some labels where, in the old style that is very precise, and then some new labels, they had, it was all over the place, keywords. So what we did until recently is that we would erase these keywords and allow our AI system to tag it automatically. So the AI would tag in a uniform way.
Right, yeah.
But AI is AI, so it was also not always correct. So what we had then was you could upload your track or give a YouTube link, and we will find that is similarity search. Do you have a reference track? We will find something similar in our catalog. But today, with the introduction of advanced version of AI, we will have a prompt. You give a prompt what you want, and you are so and so, etc. And you have a prompt search, then you have also natural language search. Just describe your video. Okay, it is on a sunset, on the sea, there are sailing boats, there is wind, and the two characters are walking on the beach, and there is nobody else. Find me some music for that. And then the AI will... that is natural language search. And then something we are having which nobody else has up to now, is that you have a video sequence, say you're an ad agency or you are a film producer. So you have a sequence, upload your sequence. The AI is going to analyze the sequence and it will suggest similar music.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So the thing is, it may not be exactly what you search. It may or it may not be, but very often when people search, sometimes they know what they want, sometimes they don't know what they want. Especially content, the user-generated content. They are not music supervisors. They are not trained. So they don't know exactly, and they don't know what production music is. So this will help them. And they say, oh yeah, that's, okay, listen, that one, that's really nice. Do you have something similar? So you click on the icon, magic wand, and it will, this is what you are looking for. Okay, let me give you similar tracks. So very quickly, you can find what you want, even if you are not a specialist.
So it's essentially like an AI version of a music supervisor.
Yes, in a way, yeah. AI will help increase tremendously the productivity.
Yeah.
And make things also, I would say, help the quality of music supervision.
So you've seen music rights and royalty system evolve in India as well as globally now for several decades. What are the good things that have happened in India that perhaps the world could emulate and vice versa?
If you look at the last 100 years, the most important moment has been the 2012 copyright amendments. When I was fighting the labels to get my mechanicals, the typical answer was, go to court and I'll see you in 20 years. That's why I think the wisest decision that was taken at that time was that let's have a right to royalty. Under the Indian Copyright Act, an author or a composer can assign all their rights, at least the commercial rights, because you cannot assign the personal rights, the moral rights. But he can assign all his commercial rights. He doesn't own anything anymore except his moral rights. But the message that Parliament was sending to the industry was, I don't care what agreement you sign. 50% of all income has to be paid to the author and composer. 1. 2, this 50% income you cannot collect. Only the composer or lyricist can collect themselves directly or the Copyright Society. So that means that the business of collecting the author and composer's money shifted to the society. And that made the society the central piece. IPRS, the 2012 amendments made IPRS the central piece of the music publishing business. But it was harmful for me as a publisher. Why? Because I cannot collect the author's share. Yes, I will pay him, but at least my top line suddenly was cut by 50%. Because I cannot collect his share. But there was no other way. You see, composers here are not signed to publishers like they are in the West. They work for this project and that project, and so there are multiple, dozens of publishers who own their works. How can any human being track this? It's not possible. So the only way for the government was to say, and Parliament was to say, all right, let's have a copyright society under the supervision of the government, because every 5 years they have to renew their license. They have to come to me, government, to renew the license. I will check. How are you working? Is everything fine, etc.? Because I have given you so much power, I need a check, right? And if you remember that after 2012 amendments, the record labels did not reconcile with that fact. They did not accept it. And finally, they sent back the license to the government, say we don't want to be a copyright society anymore. And it is only in 2017, that is 5 years later, that finally we could come to an agreement with all the labels. And in 2017, Javed Saab, Mr. Javed Akhtar became the chairman. Everything was settled. All the court cases were withdrawn. Peace came to the industry. And guess what happened? IPRS, which had the maximum revenue, was 43 crores. Today, it is close to 600 crores. And according to a music publishing report by Ernst & Young, which was published last December, which is called The Rise of Music Publishing, you can see the projections. And if you look in that report, there is one graph that is most important. Page 29, it is compliance. Though we have reached close to 600 crores, compliance is at 1.16%. That gives you an idea of the potential of the society.
What do you mean by compliance?
That means people paying. Radios don't pay. No radio is paying, has ever paid the lyricists and the composers. Can you imagine a business that rests entirely on music? Remove the music and FM radios shut down, right? The whole business rests on music. They have never paid the other composers. They have challenged it in court for ages.
Yeah.
So no income from there. Broadcasters. How many broadcasters there are in India? Over 900. How many of them have taken a license from IPRS? Very few. Telecom, nobody had paid until Airtel came along, and Airtel recently made an agreement with IPRS. Streaming services, Ghana, have they ever paid? No. And they don't belong to a poor group. I mean, Times of India is not a small company, not a small group. Savan, which got so much investment, they have never paid.
Yeah.
They pay abroad, but they don't pay in India. Right? Only Hangama has paid. And for that, people should recognize that these are the right guys. They are doing what is right. Hangama. Has Geo paid?
No.
Never. They are betraying the country. India is recognized because of Ali Akbar Khan Saab, because of Pandit Ravi Shankar, and the filmmakers, Satyajit Ray, so many people. Or even recently, the film Telugu got the Oscar. Nobody knows Geo. Say Geo in California, nobody knows what it is. You have to give respect, they are not your servants. Just act according to the law. We don't want patronage. Don't patronize us. Just pay what the due is. And today, that the Indian industry is compliant at 1.16%, people should sit up. I mean, some of these people should be shamed. You can't do that.
Since you're an advisor to IPRS, is this a shared sentiment there?
Yeah, but the thing is, to be angry is not enough.
Yeah, what can you do about it?
Yeah, so we have been fighting battles, and the courts are very slow, but they grind and they grind, and then there is a result. And we have had some very good results. The most important point is that income is increasing. The number of members is increasing. The members would not increase, the number would not increase if people were dissatisfied, right?
Yeah.
And we have moved from 3,000 members to over 14,000 members. And still I feel that we have only scratched the surface. We
I
should have
agree.
at least 50,000 members in a country the size of India,
Mhm.
considering that Denmark has 24,000 members.
Wow. Yeah.
IPRS has shown that today there is a total unity in the music industry. There is only one or two guys sitting out for whatever reasons. And but everybody is there. We are talking to each other. We are, coming to, whenever you negotiate, we come to an agreement, which you may like, you may not like, or like a little, whatever. But the point is, in the end, you agree and you move forward because 1.16%. This is the key figure. There is still a lot more out there which we are not getting. Netflix has not yet signed. You see, they negotiate for ages. They haven't signed. So the thing is, you can get angry, but what do? You don't have a seventh fleet to send against them, right? Yes, anger keeps you moving and keeps your heart in the right place. You have to be angry when people do things which they shouldn't do, which are totally illegal, and they are just gaming the system not to pay you. When in the end, what do they pay us? I mean, it's a fraction. What does it represent? It's peanuts to what they spend on other things.
Correct.
On even on electricity or whatever. So, or on the salary of their CEOs. So, some decency, we demand. Yeah.
Yeah. What is keeping you on your toes these days?
I have built what I call the circular copyright economy. I have today, besides Sing Mama, I have about 470,000 pop music, which I represent, and so over 1 million works that I and sound recordings that I represent. You see, a record label is focused on the performer, getting shows, and that's where the money is. But when you're a music publisher, you only get money when somebody else is using your music. It's a totally different approach. Which a lot of people have not understood, even though they call themselves publisher. So I am using the music that is entrusted to me. I am using in places because I have discovered that not only I, but a couple of people with whom I work, who work for me, we have an original approach to sound design in exceptional places. And for example, I have sound designed recently the Lalique, which is and by the way, Lalique is owned, 12.5% of Lalique is owned by Indian investor, an Indian family. So they have luxury hotels. You have a dinner and you look or lunch and you look out these windows and it's raining or it's not so good weather. So I have recorded bird. First of all, I made field recordings, just atmospheric. You hold up the mic, like you do in movies, also in documentaries, and the local birds. I got recordings, and so sometimes when you have lunch, you have this. Without knowing that there is the atmosphere, and then sometimes you have a few birds singing, and you feel that in fact you're not inside anymore, but you're outside. Yeah, for this new, for this luxury brand, luxury watch brand, I am introducing Dolby Atmos.
Oh, wow.
In their showroom. But the problem is that very few tracks are existing in Dolby Atmos. But, and you see that is where things come together. Since 2017, all the agreements that I have done for production music libraries, I always insisted that I have access to the studio files, to the stems. In those days, it was just an idea, okay, but I introduced it in my agreements. Now, you know very well that you need the stems to do the.
You have
to remix and you have to remaster in Dolby Atmos.
Correct.
And it's quite incredible, the experience. Nobody else has that. I mean, not Chanel. Nobody has that right now.
Yeah.
Because it's a big investment. It's costly to remix. It takes time. It takes you at least half a day, a few hours, 3 hours, 4 hours per track. So it's costly. But here I have the circular copyright economy. I use things that I control for music curator, for sync. I register them as the Copyright Society. These clients, they pay performing right to the Copyright Society. My other composers get paid directly by the society. The other publishing I am getting, which afterwards I share with the original right owners. Same for the sound recording. They will pay PPL. PPL is collecting at least public performance because PPL doesn't collect, YouTube and where small companies are totally on their own. They have to go to PDL and anyway. So it's there's very little you exploit it, and you have so many sources of income.
So how can these people reach you?
Through Music Curator, there is you can, through the website, you can send me, same you can send me through Sync Mama, the chatbot, you can send a message, and otherwise I am on LinkedIn. Everybody contacts me through LinkedIn. One thing more, which I really want to, which has to be said. You see, I don't listen to Spotify anymore, very rarely. But anyone who is interested in music, he must be on Bandcamp or he must be on SoundCloud. That's where the creativity is. Then, of course, these people also put their music on Spotify. But on Bandcamp, for example, I am following certain labels who are real cutting edge. They do things, nobody has done before. And you can follow them. Unfortunately, on Spotify, you used to be able to follow by, many years ago, you used to follow by label, but that has been removed now.
Right.
You see, earlier when you signed with a big label, they had power because they were talking to the radio jockeys. They will be able to get you airplay on the radio.
Right.
But today, who listens to the radio? I haven't listened to radio in years. And you cannot game Spotify algorithm, right? So it's all up to the quality of your music and of your fans, and how passionate your fans are about you and how they speak about you. So there is a whole world outside what is called today, what we call, the music industry.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Achille, thank you so much for sharing so much history, context, insights, and so much perspective on so many things. Thank you so much for joining us here, and all the best to you and all your ventures. I hope you never retire.
No, and my message is never give up. Stay in the game. Whatever happens, stay in the game. Never, ever give up. That is how you get through.